Hi there. I'm going to do a video on a plugin I've been working on called Grails Payment. I've just released a test site called Test Payment, which is the site I'm going to be working from to show you this demonstration. The actual plugin code is here, and you can also find it on Grails plugins called Payments. This plugin covers three forms of payment: PayPal, Square, and Stripe. I have been doing quite a lot of updates for this new release, which is going to be 1.02, and it's all really related around PayPal. And previously, all three methods were working. PayPal's method was a redirect, or it opened up a PayPal page, or overtook your shopping cart or your page as such, and it went into PayPal and did its thing, and it came back again. The new methods attempts to basically do a pop-up window for PayPal, and the difference is really about the new method uses a JavaScript in the front end, which kind of matches up with what Square Stripe does, but it is slightly different again in the way it works. Whereas the previous method, or the working method for 1.01, was only a redirect window into PayPal. So really, to get this plugin working from scratch as a basic site, without all of the crazy stuff that I've tried to do with this payment, the test site to show you, you'd need to just enable this dependency, and this one if you need the Square payment. Then in your Bootstrap, you need to enable payment service and add payment config. This is quite important for the configuration of this plugin, because you are given a sample application, which it's really up to you. Actually, you don't have to add this. You can add this if you want to have a web interface to configure all your settings. But in the sample configuration that I've provided, this needs to be called application.groovy in your app. And in there, you need to define everything correctly for whichever method you're going to use: PayPal, Stripe, or Square. And if you're going to use, so here it's enabled true. If you make them false, so if you just did Square enabled false, you won't need any of this stuff because they're not going to get used. I mean, you can leave it all as it is and just make this false, make this true if it's just PayPal, and make this false, or make this true, false, false, depending on what you want, or in this case, everything is true. So in the case of test payment, all I would do, in the case of creating an application, I would just get the file, which is this file here, the raw version of it. So you just do wget this -o Grails application. I think I've got it anyway. I'm going to call it Groovy so you can see that we've got the new file as this, but it would be called .groovy. And that's the same file here. So if I now rm this file, so once we've got this file, you need to configure the configuration. And in the case of application to configure, Bootstrap. So I've got the same thing. And in my case, it's 102, which is what I'm running locally. And I've also got probably a lot more that I was messing around with at the time. That library that I was talking about. So anyway, we'll get going. I'm going to show you the front end, and then I'm going to copy over my own config just to show you it actually all of this working. So first of all, I'm going to show you the web interface, which is that Bootstrap line that enables the configuration. Once you've enabled that, what you will get is once it starts up, we've got something here called payment config controller, and in here you need to edit the variables and values, and this is because I've zoomed right in. So whether payment configuration controller enabled. So this is this whole configuration web interface. If you want to, once you've configured it, or if you want to use the web interface, you can just disable this, and that will then from now on. This is all based on what you've got for your database configuration in your application. In my case, it's just running the H2 database, which is the memory DB. And once I kill that application, it's all gone. So if it's going to a database that persists like MySQL or something, once you set this, you'd have to manually go into the database and change the Boolean value of this to true. And I need to put a key in for this. Payment checkout enabled. Payment checkout enabled. This is basically when you go to checkout. So this is the index. So there is one called checkout, and I would be careful. Checkout, if you don't have anything in there. So at the moment, it's got this example. And this is based on session information. So if I go to test controller, clear the session, and then go home, because we've been on the page before, we loaded in something, it's doing that thing. So if we go back to the payment controller and checkout used to be the default page, but I've made it so when you go to checkout and there's nothing in your cart, it doesn't load in. And when it says disable, if you do disable it, you get this action happening like we get in here, where when you go to it, it just returns you into index saying something's gone wrong. It doesn't want you to go into it. So it's asking me, do you want to disable that checkout? Now, I would say don't disable it, because there's quite a bit of a plugin that tries to go back to that page if there are problems with the methods that you've tried to use. So I would say don't use it, but if you wish, you can disable it. And then it's the same thing as whether you want to enable or disable, and then the modes for each one. And the modes are configured by what keys you've configured in these bits here. And in regards to some of this stuff isn't also used by the application. I just sort of collected it because I thought they might be important, but then they're not being used. So at some point I need to clear them out. One of them has got something about location. I think it's square. One of them has got a location. Look at that configuration. So I'm missing location. So I need to make sure that that's enabled on the web interface as well. So maybe I'll put that as part of the 102. So since it looks like it's been missed, yeah. So I'll add that in. There's a location missing, and the location is basically something in Square that it gives you your location. One of the tabs at the bottom of the Square config is location, and you need to make sure that ID matches whatever that is. And we've got that for there you go, location tab in the Square API dev. So I'm going to now overwrite this with my own keys. And they're all dummy keys anyway, but I'd prefer not to show you my stuff. So in theory, just basically all that is now is me logging into the PayPal API and the Square API and the Stripe API and creating accounts and then setting up a sandbox environment for each one of them. I'm going to go to this test controller, which is all available on this new test payment site that I've uploaded. So here you've got the test controller. So under my username is anything, and I'm going to put this into the documentation as well. So this is all the stuff here, and all the pages that are related to this are also in here. So you can follow that up from here. So in this case, it's a shopping cart, and I've got an index page which loads in payment checkout. From when I've installed the plugin, now I get all these methods, and these are literally what's being passed in. We've got another one called index PayPal JX, which is, these two pages are identical. The only difference is we've got this tag enabled in this version versus that one. And that's the new PayPal method, the JS method. So I'll show you, so where is that? Test payment checkout, test checkout, new payment. So this is that one, this is this one, right? That's fine. So here, when we do check PayPal, doesn't like it. So. And this was what was there for 101. So when you clicked on PayPal, it took you into PayPal, redirected the whole site, and then you'd have to log in with your PayPal details, and you purchase it. And when it's all done, the address there should be the address that we've put into the screen. It takes you back into the site and it shows you the breakdown and all the rest of it and the price. I need to do some work here, but there you go. That's your old method. So if I go into the new method now, and I'll show you new method of PayPal. Save details for next time is where it stores that user onto the system. Now there is a different behavior between saving details and not saving the details. If you don't tick this box, it will create a user based on the email address. This is why you get a different choice, even though it copies it into here. It makes your email address the same, your username the same as your email address. And if the address matches an existing address that was signed up for this email address, that underlying user is picked out as the user because everything matches up, and basically this user gets the order that was being signed up to. If the address is slightly different and it existed, then a new user called A2, 3, 4, depending on how many times this address varies. You know, if there's variations of this address or different addresses but the same email, then that user gets a new, not email address, their email address remains the same, but their username, is what changes to sys3, sys4, sys5 and whatever, so that the system can then make sure that, you know, the orders are not going to the incorrect user, even though the user hasn't asked to sign up. It collects it in that manner. If we click the PayPal button, you can see it's a different behavior. This button pops up, and then if we click this, PayPal has a pop-up window, and the collection of information from what we saw in the last one to what we see here is different. The other one had more information. This one doesn't, because they work differently, and this is my very first release of this one. It's a little bit more complicated the way the back end of all this works. And as I say, that new method is more of what PayPal developer documentation describes for the JS method. So we're using JavaScript to do kind of what the back end does for the other one, but then it ties into the back end to capture, once the transactions come back from PayPal, it kind of ties in, but it does it in a very, very different way. and this is why we're seeing slightly different information. Which one would I say to use? Well, that's up to you at the moment. As you can see, it's slightly different information, even though I was actually collecting the items, so I'm not sure, maybe there's a problem here. So if I go here, I'll show you another method, which is just the buttons. So here we've got them. So maybe I've got some more work to do with that as well. So maybe as part of 102, again, I need to look into that. I need to write all these down. But in this case, I've caught the name and the stuff. And we've even got more information as well. But the email that's come back is their actual PayPal email. And you can see here, we've got this one, see? Let's create the new system username because it's got that email address already. And whether, yes, if we did that other order and that had a different address to this one. So if we do this order again, we'll have it under this user, yeah, because it's the same details for that button. And I'll show you what I mean. So if we go back to here, we do test alternative item buttons, PayPal, do it again. And now, another thing I need to point out here as well is the transaction is £10, but the actual cost of it doesn't work out to £10. And the reason is the cost of the items doesn't come up to £10, but we've got SIS2, the address was the same. And the reason for that is instances coming from the test controller. The reason for that is because you see, I've tried to break it down here. We've got a subtotal of £5, which is your items, and we've got different charges like handling and tax total and shipping discount, and then the items per cost and their taxation. So the tax total here has to match up. Sorry, the tax prices here has to match up to your tax total. Your calculation of your subtotals and your handling and everything has to match up with your final total. Yeah, so it's quite a lot of work there involved, making sure all your figures are right. Otherwise, people have war complaints saying the figures don't match up. And in the final steps of all this, when it captures all this, it tries to figure out whether the final total that was given in this instance by yourself matches what PayPal received back from the remote server as well, before it marks it's complete. So yeah, stepping back to all this now, I'm not sure why it's created the SIS2. It should be SIS1 because the details for this user were the same. The details of the address, the details, see, it's even got the email address and stuff, but when it's gone through this new method, I haven't as yet been able to capture all this on the way back. And when it comes back, it's going to it's calling different things, and I haven't really sort of captured this as part of it. Even though it's actually on the page, maybe I just need to do some more work with all that. Okay. Now I wanted to talk about some of the other features of this plugin. So we've kind of covered PayPal, and I've shown you a checkout, which is, so in this case, I've got this index. So if we go to index, we've got these items, and if we make this £1.20, and we can see we've not even got a total or any, we do have a total. So in this case, I've got to make sure that the values match up for the total to what we've got here. Strange. Final type was 250. £1.10. Item 1. Right, so if we make this should get a different price now. See, it's gone up. I'll make this £5. We've got a different total. So it's all, these parts all calculated by the system. So in this case, we don't have to provide any of that. It works it out itself and it does it on the screen. And this is the checkout. So item 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, and on the screen it should become item 2, 2, 2, 2. So this is using the payment checkout method, and the checkout method you get the form and whatever you've enabled. So if I disabled Square and Stripe, all I would see is this button. If I only have this button and I've got this payment.js method, then that new other button pops open. But in this case that I've shown you, you know, it doesn't do that with the normal method if you don't declare that variable. And then the buttons, so payment buttons, so test buttons. It's a case of payment buttons rather than checkout, and then the instance can come from the controller, or in this case we've defined it ourselves. And in this case, if I clear the sessions and go back to buttons, I've got address details, but I don't have actual items. There's no items. So in this case, I could be using this to do a donation, for example, you know, and then this could be made up if you want, you know, but we've just got a figure and a currency, and then if I click go, this is our £1 here being charged. Continue. Once it's paid, it will take us back to the site, and the site will say thank you, blah blah. And if I make if I enable this tag onto test buttons, and we go back to test buttons again, and we click PayPal, we get the alternative method, and we're going to again be charged for the £1 through the pop-up window. And it should take us back, and we get slightly different information. And this is going to be a problem, so I need to fix this, because otherwise it's going to be generating loads of their PayPal username. So I do need to fix this problem before I release it properly. So that's the buttons and PayPal covered. Now I want to talk about, we've got two other methods, Square and Stripe. And they work quite similar to the new JS method of PayPal. So if we go back to checkout, I'm going to do it on checkout first. Sorry, I use really bad data, and the reason is because I'm always filling in these forms, and it always ends up as gobbledygook, because otherwise I'll be there forever trying to put in the right information. So we're going to do Square, and when you do Square, it loads in the Square payment form, and with Square it has a valid dummy card number, which it's 4111. And if I pay it now, we will end up with an error, which we shouldn't have. I need to look at that. And this is where it's gone wrong, and it's redirected us to the checkout page, as you can see, although it's not the checkout method, so you should actually be alright. Yeah, I'll have to have a look at that. So it might be related to all the new stuff that I've done with for the new stuff. And this is why I do dummy data, because then you can see when it goes wrong. You don't want to be there repeating that. I'm going to do stripe. I just want to see. This works. Okay, so this is a stripe one. You can see here we've got a charge ID from Stripe, status, balance transaction token, and the sell information. If we go here and we go to test controller again and we do test paper buttons and do Stripe and then do 40. There's obviously some amount that was set on the page to test buttons, or was £1, wasn't it? We can't even see it on this page. And there we go. What have we got? That's not right either. But why have we got okay, the session data. So if the card isn't valid or anything like that, that's down to Stripe's JS file that validates all that. It's nothing to do with the plugin. Okay. Yeah, that looks better. And the transaction amounts, which we can't see for some reason. But that's all come from the page and it's worked. So if I go back to here again, I just want to maybe, I'm going to do square again with just the button for 11111. Again, square is doing the validation of the form here. It's not me. The square now working. This is, you can see square payment details, and this is stuff from square. We are not seeing the amount on this page at the moment. I'm gonna just clearing the session data is obviously important in this case, because the clear session data, in your case, if you did a transaction, what you really want to do is afterwards just clear out all these session values, which I've got here. I just want to test out the square again. Oops. So I'm not sure why it went wrong. Okay, it has worked. And that's our square payment for a checkout. So the checkout and buttons, the difference between the two is the checkout, you get the form page and you get all the safety details, and that's all coming from the plugin, including the country. The titles is coming from the plugin, and unfortunately this is all it's got. I can provide you for the titles if you need. Just make sure you raise a problem request with the plugin, Grails payment and issue. Raise an issue on here if it's really important to you. It was more an example at the time, and it kind of became the page. So far as the buttons, I don't really know what to do with them. They're a little bit of a mess at the moment. They don't provide any standards between the three, and Square does. These two don't really have a proper button like PayPal. And I don't know if there's anything else I need to show you. Also on the basic payment buttons. This is where it just does a basic transaction with no actual underlying data of items or anything like that. Okay, so that wraps up the video. I don't really know what else I can add to this. At this point, I know there are a few problems I'm going to resolve before I release it properly at this point, now that I've spotted them. This wraps up the video. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.